Yay.
Welcome back to the dungeon where we geek out on all things horror, thriller, mystery, and suspense. And holy shit to bed. I have quite the guest for you today. Anybody who has spent any amount of time in the horror community or horror fam, whatever you want to call it, has seen this guy, has heard about this guy, has read about this guy, or something. But you may not, I don't know, maybe some of you may not know his name, but you definitely know his moniker, and that is Uncle Creepy, Steve Barton. Steve, how the hell are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. Wow, what a fucking, I mean, can I curse? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah.
Hey, so what a fucking introduction. That was great, man. You know, it's always weird when I hear people speak about me, because to me, I am and I always will be just some schmuck. You know what I mean? So when I hear things like that, it's very humbling. So thank you for that.
Thank you for all the stuff that you've done for the horror community, and just looking at, yeah. How many decades was it? But yeah, so hey, let's bullshit.
Let's do it. Romero homage, very good.
I'm going to be throwing some little Easter eggs out to everybody. So it's like if I or Steve says something that doesn't make sense to you,
it will.
You just gotta buy the book, and that's what we're going to be talking about today is your new memoir. Because, God damn, if there's ever a person that has a story to tell, it's you. You have a book coming out, Comedy of Tragedies. It's available for pre-order now, but it's officially going to be launched out into the streets on December 10th, 2024. Now, I understand an old mutual friend of ours is connected to somehow as our man Josh Milliken.
Josh is a wonderful person. When I stepped away from Dread Central, you know, Josh was still working with them. And over the time, you know, it's funny. I ran that site for like 18 years by myself, and then I leave and they've had like 5 assistant editors or whatever it is. But you know, Josh is the only one who really tried to honor what I created. And I did create that entire fucking thing, you know? Mm-hmm. And I was pioneering the internet when it was still the Wild West, man. So a lot of things I came up with and a lot of the ways horror journalism is done, you know, it still traces back to the way I kind of did it. You know, people like myself, people like Brad Miska, people like Ryan Turek, who's working with Blumhouse now. I mean, there were no rules, so we were all coming up with guidelines as needed, I guess. So a lot of the things I created are still adhered to, and I think that's absolutely amazing. And you know what's even funnier? The people that are adhering to them don't even know where they came from. So it's fuck it, right? Whatever.
Now, yeah, it's a pretty chunky book, about little over 300 pages, and I did read it, and
I'm so sorry.
I was traumatized.
I hear you.
Well, you do warn people at the beginning of the book. It's like, look, this is...
You're gonna... You know what's funny? It's like, when people hear the name of the book, A Comedy of Tragedies, they're like, that's kind of a cool name, but it's also weird and I don't understand it. And then once they read the book, they're like, oh, now I get it.
Right.
You know? And it's, you know, I'm gonna be, you know, I'm an honest person, you know, just from reading whatever you read and the way the Scott Johnson, who actually helped with the formatting and he wrote the foreword, put it. I don't have time to bullshit people, man. You know, there's too much real stuff going on to create fucking bullshit. So I'm an ridiculously straight shooter. So I grew up with a lot of demons, man. A lot of them, and they've been rattling around in here for my whole life. So when I originally started writing the book, it was to do the psychological thing, you know, and get it all out of my system and then burn it. And, you know, I wrote like half of it and I ended up moving my, you know, another hand grenade was thrown on my life, as it's happened so many times. And I ended up back here on the East Coast where I'm with my wife now, Danielle, who's amazing. And she's a lot of the reason why I keep going. And one day I was just sitting here. She's like, "So you working on your book, right?" And I'm like, "Well, I wrote like half of it, you know." And she's like, "Well, can I read it?" And I'm like, "What the fuck for? You know everything about it, you know?" And she's like, "Well, I'm just curious." So I sent her the book, and she went away. And I'm playing video games or whatever the fuck I'm doing. And she comes back a few hours later and she's like, "You can't burn this." And I'm like, well, why not? I mean, that's why I wrote it, you know? And she's like, "There's stuff in here that has a really good chance of helping people, or people will relate to it." I don't remember exactly the exact thing she said because I was flabbergasted. You know, I didn't even conceive of that. And so she got at me to keep writing. So, you know, I took like about 7 months off from writing it in between the move and the aforementioned hand grenade and me here now. And after that, I just picked it up again and I started just typing away, and it was a whole new bunch of shit to talk about. And I finished it, and there's still that urge to kind of print it and burn it. I might do an ARC one just on principle. But what's interesting is I think it's strange because, you know, when I first went to Encyclopocalypse, right, and I asked, you know, Josh, "Dude, you want to take a look at this book? Do you think it's anything?" Because I had every intention of self-publishing it because I didn't think anybody would want this fucking story, you know? And, you know, I spoke to Sean Durriger, and he was like, "No, we want it." I'm like, "Really?" And I think at that time, it was more that it's because I wrote it that he wanted it, you know? And that's very flattering in and of itself, but I knew what this book was.
Did Sean have any inkling of what it was going to be about?
I don't think anyone has any inkling of how far it actually goes, you know? I think what happened was, at first, he came back, or Josh suggested that maybe we call it Uncle Creepy's House of Horrors presents, you know, A Comedy of Tragedies. And I'm like, well, first, that sounds like a coloring book, and two, no. I am in control of what the story of my life is going to be called. And they never mentioned it again once I said no, and they've been really amazing to work with. And, you know, I asked them, like, "Dude, please, before we sign anything, before whatever, read it. Know what you're getting into, because this really isn't like anything else you put out, you know? This isn't just me sitting around being Uncle Creepy telling industry stories. I don't think anybody upon first read, is prepared for how personal it is and how tragic it can be, but also how I approach things in a way is just gallows humor, man. So I think about the most hideous thing, the most heaviest thing anybody has ever even dreamed of dealing with, and at the end of the day, I always tried to find the humor in it when I could, and that's my lifeline, man. Trying to find the absurdities in even the most horrible situations and trying to smile about something, But after he had read it and his partner had read it, they were just fucking blown away. And they were like, no, we have to release this. And, it's very odd to me that people like yourself, who I've never really even spoken to before, other than maybe passing or whatever online, now you know every fucking thing about me, And that's kind of weird to me. But as Danielle said, if somebody reads it and while they're down or they're desperate or shit is just falling down around them, as it happens to us so often, if they can read that and kind of gather that it'll be all right and you can go on, and as much gas as you need in the tank to get through this is exactly what you have. You may not have any extra, but you could do it. And if it helps just one person, it was all worth it. And it was worth all the labor of writing it. And, I've gotten such amazing reactions from it, from yourself as included. And it's strange because in a lot of ways, everyone's judging my life, But it's interesting because I still can't really grasp the fact that anyone would find this interesting or anyone would find it relatable. To me, as absurd as everything is in that book, and I can assure you, I did not fabricate a single thing. I didn't exaggerate a single thing. All of that fucking shit from A to Z actually happened to the best of my recollection, and that's what I put out there. And to get people responding to it whom I have the utmost respect for, like Mike Felcher and Milliken himself and you and Adrian Barbeau and Adam Green and Josh Stolberg and Phil Nobile and Kyra Sean, it blows my mind, man. It's such a humbling experience.
It's incredible because I was impressed just the acknowledgement section at the very beginning of the book when you name all these names. It's like, holy hell, this is like a who's who of the horror industry.
And I'm very privileged I know how lucky I am, man. I got to befriend legends. I got to be mentored by legends, and all of my idols in one way or another I'm either personal friends with or they were special enough for me to include. And I believe me, that part of the acknowledgments alone is as humbling as it gets to me, because I've had all these wonderful people in my life, and the least I could do is acknowledge them and just say, hey, man, I really appreciated what you've done for me. Because I'll be honest with you, man, I don't really know how to react to kindness, because I've had so much shit thrown at me all the time. And usually I only hear from people when I fuck something up, So
I'm shaking my head because I've been through the same thing. I mean, I didn't have the upbringing you had. I'm certainly not.
Thank God.
Yeah. But I do have the life experience of being told that you're. I was always told, well, Tom, you're just weird. You're just weird.
Yeah.
And or people. The only time they bothered to want to talk to me is like, it was one of these things. It was like, well, Tom, we have to talk. It's like they didn't give a shit about me any other time. It's like, well, that's the only time they wanted to say something negative about me. And then other aspects of my life where it's like where I'm to the point. It's like, look, I have no problem paying the consequences for actions that I make, decisions that I make. I own them. That's me, nobody else. But what really grated on me was I lost a lot of the most significant things in my life. I lost as a result of something that I have absolutely no fucking control over. Mm-hmm. It's something else that happened. It was somebody else in reality itself. So, but that's enough about me. But we're talking. So that's sort of like what the things that were inside me that your book and your experience and your approach to dealing with things spoke to me about. I was like, yeah, it's just me.
There's a reason why every time I talk about the book, I hashtag it GFY Tour 24, baby. Middle fingers high.
That's right. That's right. You have a shirt that's made out like that. Is it the GFY man. Tour?
It's this really cool cat named Matt Balea. He made a Comedy of Tragedies t-shirt. It says hashtag and me I trust on the front, and on the back is a really cool image. And it says a Comedy of Tragedies, and under that is the hashtag GFY Tour. And you know what? That's really insane to me, because there's no greater compliment to me than when an artist wants to associate themselves with your art. You know? That it's so, again, I mean, I can't stop using the word humbling, but it really is, man. And to see the kind of love that people have, for people who've pre-ordered it, and they don't know what they're getting when they get it, and it's just that I'm really blessed, man. I'm a very lucky guy,
Oh. Well, so the book has, 24 chapters.
The chapters are kind of interactive,
Yeah. Like I said, it's about just shy of 300 pages, and just for those of you who are pre-ordering it or wait until December to get it when it's available. I'd say for the most part, the first 11 chapters are pretty low. So, I mean, dude, you've been through the shit ringer. It's stuff of So the first 11 chapters, you can get through the first 11. It's very important that you read those 11 chapters. But once you get to chapter 12, that's when things starts to.
There are funny things in there too, though. Especially some of the shit but I get it. It's very. Here's one of the things I was so cognizant about was, how do I balance the good with the bad to make it an entertaining read, because there was so much bad. So I could only hope and pray to just, my biggest thing, and I guess I achieved that without even trying to, is Mike Felsher said to me, he's like, Steve, I read this whole book and I have no idea how you made it this far, but after all the shit you've been through, not once in the book did it sound like you were complaining. You know? Just took it, you dealt with it, and you moved on. He says, I respect that so much, because I'm not a poor me guy. I'm a, shit fucked up, let's deal with it and move on, type of guy.
Yeah. And one thing I want to say before we get into some more sort of questions I have specifically of things in the book is, you name some names in the book, and other times you don't. When you don't name the names, you give them like a nickname or something like that.
Yeah, there's some colorful ones.
But but one thing I really appreciated and all the things we were talking about, good or bad, times where you support one another, and times that they were throwing you under the bus, you never speculated. You never said, okay, well, I think this person did this or this. No, it's like, as far as I know, this is I have evidence as far as my understanding of what was going down and the evidence and information I had at the time. This is what happened.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, honestly, that ain't even the half of it. Sometimes there's plenty of things I kept out of the book for specific reasons. And also, to be honest with you, if I do a book tour or a reading, I don't want to do a reading. I would rather just give people B-sides, things I kept out of the book so I'd have some interesting shit to talk about, because the thrust of the book, I've been told, makes people feel like they're very much just sitting at the kitchen table with me and I'm just laying shit out, And that interaction is something I want to keep fresh. And plus, I don't really want to spoil anything that's in the book for people, So right. I always want to. I could write a whole other book with just more shit, but believe me, that was kind of the fucking Cliff's Notes, in a lot of ways, but they were the important things. There are plenty of other funny things happened. But it's just the important things or the outrageous things or the things that meant something to me personally. That's what's, And I don't have time for speculation, man. I really don't. Give me something happens, give me a reason for it. Okay, that's what happened. Fine, fuck it, I'm out. I don't care. I don't want to waste my time where I'm not wanted, where
right.
I'm not needed. I would rather help someone else get to where they need to be than sit there spinning my wheels at a place I've already been,
But your introduction to horror is that time that you watched Night of the Living Dead as a kid, and can you tell us a little bit about what you felt when you? Well, what was your first reaction?
I think that was pretty well illustrated in the book.
Yeah.
Again, I've always been someone that exists at night. I am not a day person. I am certainly not a morning person. And, man, when like I said, we had this big-ass black and white TV at the time, and it was in the living room, and fucking when I would hear my parents snoring, I would run out to the living room. My brother would put on the TV, but this particular time, I think Rob was over at a friend's house sleeping over or whatever the case was. So I was alone. So I did our usual thing. I waited to hear them snoring, and I tiptoed the motherfucker into the living room to put the TV on. And all of a sudden, I saw this newscast about the dead coming back to life. And I was like, holy shit, right? And at that time, I'm like, man, what luck. I'm the only person awake to realize this right now. We can get out of here. Because they're like, oh, you need to get to rescue stations. You need to do this. So I woke up my poor parents, man. And I'm like, yo, the dead are coming. We got to get out of here, And they're like, oh, you're having a nightmare. And I'm like, oh, I'm not really having a nightmare. I can show you. And, I grabbed my mom and I pulled her out of bed. And my dad fucking hated me as it was following along, just super pissed, And I brought him into the living room and I pointed at the TV and I'm like, look. And of course, what was there was, Night of the Living Dead, that famous newscast scene. And yeah, that's the night I got my first spanking. First time my lily white Irish and Italian ass ever felt pain. And I was laying in bed and my ass was fucking throbbing. And all I could think of was, wow, I was so fucking terrified, yet completely safe at the same time. And that's the coolest thing ever. So that was the night Uncle Creepy was born. That was my defining moment at 3 years old, Wow. And that's one of my earliest memories, aside from how the book opened. That's one of only 2 early childhood memories I have. And it just blew my mind. So, of course, I started trying to consume all of the horror I could find, whether it be stealing comics because I didn't have money. Sorry, hustling. Too. But a man had to do what a man had to do at 6 years old, right? So, so It was just I tried to absorb it, and I ended up, having my moral compass primarily forged by George A. Romero. So it was through his movies like The Crazies and Martin and The Dead where I learned the differences between right and wrong and how to look at situations a little differently. The first time I met George, I was like, dude, you raised me and didn't even know it. And it was just incredible. And I've never looked back, man. I have a curse, and I think all horror fans have this curse. Even if we know something is going to be terrible, it's still there. We're still going to give it this fair shot, and we know it's going to be bad sometimes, but we still do it. Like I'm one of those idiots that say there's like 3 good entries in a 10-film franchise. I have to have all 10, because I don't want it broken up. It's like you're violating some form of stupid history in your own head. So, yeah, man, that was the beginning of it for me. And then as I got older, everybody, what friends I had, they were all starting to do the usual boy thing. They're putting sports figures up on their walls, and they're putting, the more older ones are putting up pinups or Farrah Fawcett. Shit that I just date myself, but I don't give a fuck. And, I had Leatherface. I had fucking Pumpkinhead. I had Pinhead. I had Friday the 13th. I had the Tall Man, Phantasm, Reverend Kane from Poltergeist. All of that stuff.
Wow.
All over my room. And, my mom, God bless her, she said to me, I don't remember if I put this in the book, but she sat me down one time and she said to me, Steve, it's great that you really love this stuff. And I'm happy you have something that brings you so much joy. But you may want to consider getting into some other things that you could actually make a career out of, or actually, because no one's ever going to give you money to think of all this and love this weird shit. And I'm like, well, I'll just have to see for myself. And, one of the few things I've ever proved her wrong. And I think she would be so happy to have been wrong. And I'm sorry, I'm not giving you a chance to talk, dude. I just fucking...
That's you actually, you know what? You've already answered like 2 other questions that I had.
I get that a lot.
I'm just checking them off, I would have thought that writing either a autobiography or memoir or whatever you want to call it is at least to me is a lot more difficult than like writing a novel or writing a story, because you could adapt a certain voice or style or something like that when you write a story. But when you're writing I would think when you're writing a memoir, you got to go back and really open up a lot of painful memories.
That was the hardest part for me, man, to be honest with you. I figured if I don't do anything halfway, I'm going to do something, I'm going to fucking go. So for some of the parts of some of the incidents, in order for me to write them and do them justice, to try and convey the impact that they had on me, that was a really difficult job. And the only way I was able to do that was I had to put myself back in those positions. I had to open those doors that I had closed for so long. And I think the main reason why I did it was because once I was back in that room or back on that street or back anywhere, it was, this is the last time I'm coming here, So I am going to detail it, everything I possibly could remember about what happened, and I'm going to let it fly. And there were points in that book where I'm upfront with the reader sometimes. I'm like, listen, this took me like 3 months, or this took me like X amount of time, or I had to step away from this. I think now maybe I'm ready, Was the book is very it's very me, you know. It's just I'm a conversationalist, and God, now that I said that out loud, I'm glad it's very me. If not, I would have wrote somebody else's fucking autobiography. But you know, it was really difficult to do, and that's actually a big reason why I'm not doing the audiobook version. You know, because when I went into those places and I reopened those doors, I was adamant when I said, I am not coming back here ever again. This is it, you know? And so one of the people I had sent the book to way before Josh and Sean and everybody at Encyclopocalypse, I sent to a really good friend of mine named Mark Redfield. And Mark is just one of the most amazing people I'm so privileged to know. And he's an actor, and he was last seen in Netflix's House of Usher, you know? And I was like, can you take a look at this for me, you know? And because I really respected his opinion. I go, if you really like it, maybe we could work out something. You could do the audiobook version, because he has like a voice I want a whole house made out of. You know, I just want to roll around in Mark Redfield's voice. He got back to me a few days later, literally like 2 days later. He's like, I read that book twice, you know, because I could not stop turning the pages. It was the quickest, and it's not a short book, but he's like, it was one of the quickest reads I've ever done. And he said to me, I don't want to narrate this. I want to perform this, you know? And it's very much written in the first person narrative. So Mark, God bless him, he decided he wanted to, he wants to perform it and really bring the story to life with sound and an original score, and just it's another blessing, you know, that I'm very grateful for, to be surrounded by so many wonderful people that are looking to give back to me. You know, it's amazing. And yeah, man, I've answered a couple of people, like, they're like, why aren't you reading the audiobook? And I'm like, I can't go there again, you know? And number one, I wrote it, I lived it, I did all the fucking work. Someone else can read it, right? So, you know, it's just, those are the places I don't want to revisit no more. I'm officially leaving that shit behind, because if I can't burn it and it's going to be out there, that doesn't mean I have to relive it, you know?
Right. Were there memories that you went back to, recalled, that when you did, looking at it from a perspective of, well, this is what I knew then, this is who I am now. Were you impressed or blown away, or somehow of how much you've grown or changed during that time?
Nothing about this story phases me anymore, and it's because I've lived this life, you know? I don't see, I mean, thank you for saying that, but I don't see in my head the growth.
Really?
You see the perseverance that I said, okay, I'm not going to do this. Well, fuck it. Now I'm going to do that. You know, I see that, but all of that stuff in there was just normal to me, as abnormal as it is, which is a lot of the reason why I never thought that anyone would be interested. You know, when I first wrote the first half, before Danny had read it, I very much wrote it from a place where I was writing it, you know? This was me. I'm only writing this for me. I didn't give a fuck about my grammar. I didn't give a fuck about this. I didn't give a fuck about anything. I just wanted this shit out of my system. And once she brought up that, you know, maybe this could help somebody, you know, she saw it in its absolute rawest form. And once she said that, I revisited it a little bit. And I did storyteller it. You know, I added things around some of these incidents to try to recreate the era or what was going on in that time and what was happening, you know? So, I mean, this book is like, it covers like 5 decades. So I have to bring to life the 70s. I have to bring to life the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. And that was arduous at times, but you know what? I had written enough in that first half where I kind of blazed through. There's actually a typo, and probably the one you sent, you were sent, that it's in my foreword where I wrote this whole page of shit, and then like there's a paragraph that reads, 2 paragraphs in, I still don't know what this is going to be about, you know? It was like 5 paragraphs in. Yes, I suck at math, but I'm not that bad, right? So I'm like, Sean, you got to change this, buddy. That's one of the things we need to do. But that just shows you where I was at. That I had written that to me. I don't know what this is going to be about. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I'm doing this. So I went back and I just and I didn't even give it a major overhaul. It was just a slight retooling, you know? And it read as a story as opposed to just fucking the events that have been haunting me my whole life, both figuratively and literally,
right.
Which is even more fucked up, you know? You wake up one morning and you're like, what do you mean I'm cursed? What the fuck is that about, you know?
Yeah.
It's such an unreal ride, but again, that was my normal, man.
Wow. And then one of the chapters you have dedicated to your time in New York when you were in New York City when 9/11 occurred.
Yeah. That was one of the most difficult, and the reason why I think that hit me way harder than anything else was because, you know, when you're growing up, I was in my 20s at the time, and wasn't I 20s, 30s? I don't know. I suck at math. We established that. So,
I don't even know how old I am. I have to get a calculator out to figure it out.
I fucking hear you, dude. So, it's like growing up, you expect to lose your mom, you expect to lose your dad, you expect to lose all these people who are nurturing you or not nurturing you, usually in my case, but you never expect to lose your best friend, you know? And that's what happened to me, and I was there. You know, I watched it happen. And ever since, it's like I get to watch my best friend die on TV every year, dozens of times. So I don't watch TV on 9/11. I don't listen to the radio on 9/11. I can't, because I love that people never forget. I love that, but I haven't even really, I can't even process it. You know, I was diagnosed with PTSD from that day. You know, there was a lot of hideous things happening, sights which I'll never forget. And again, you know, there's only 2 times I've ever openly talked about that. One is in the book, and that's the last time I'm going to talk about that. And before then was I appeared on my friend Adam Green's podcast called Horrified. And I sat down and I told him that story on video. So those are the only 2 times I since it happened that I really, really revisited. You know, and sometimes I ain't gonna lie, you know, I'm typing crying, you know, and that's just the way it is. But I hope that I did enough, because there were so many things people don't realize about that day, and you wouldn't know unless you were right there.
Yeah.
So I hope I did enough to lend to the gravity of what that situation was like, but also honor the people that were the heroes of that day. And that was really difficult to do. And again, closing that door and moving on, and just staying away from the media once every September.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the second half of the book, how is the haunted rocks industry going for you?
It's doing very well, sir.
Good.
You know, we'll leave that for them. Let's not go there. But yeah, you'll find that shit out when you read it. And hang on, before we go any further, let me stress: the entire first 11 chapters are not a total downer. Okay?
No, right? Okay.
You know, there's shit in there that'll keep you interested. It's just that sometimes when you're growing up in your formative years, you go through things, man, and the worst part about it is you always feel like you're the only one this is happening to. And I just want people to know that they're not alone, that this does happen and you can get past it, you know?
Now, some people may, I'm sure a lot of people have asked you, is like, okay, how do I get to do what you do? Right? But it seems in your case, you were just at the right time, at the right place, when you met some guy from Fangoria.
Yeah, Tony Timpone, man. You know, at that time I was with this girl, and back then it was like, again, it was sort of at the very infancy of the internet. And my girl at that time, she should just go on eBay and look for cool shit to buy me, which I'm trying to convince my wife to start doing. And sorry about that, I'm calling you out. Yep, you. Anyway. So she bought me, listen, it's very apparent that I'm very juvenile, okay? No matter how old I am, I'm a kid, you know? And being that I didn't really have a childhood proper, I guess, you know, a lot of these thrills that I started having later in life. So I got to experience all this cool shit in my later years. So being that I am a 13-year-old at heart in the body of a 52-year-old, she had bought me this roaring Jurassic Park cage, which was nothing more than a hollow cardboard box, and you pressed a button and it went rawr, right? But I'll press that fucking button all day. I don't give a shit. And the person she bought it from, and, you know, he ended up living down the street from me. So it didn't make sense for him to mail it, you know. So they, you know, he got in touch with her, and she gave him my phone number. And I'm like, yeah, man, just drop it on by. And I'm sitting on my stoop, which for anyone not in the Northeast is the steps in front of your house. And fucking Tony Timpone from Fangoria magazine turns the corner. And I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, you're Tony, right? And he's like, yeah, man. So from then on, we became fast friends, and he knew that I knew my shit. You know, he saw it. It was apparent. And he gave me my first gig in the industry, which was writing or moderating the message boards for Fangoria.com. And that's when I picked the name Uncle Creepy, which was an homage to my favorite comic book from the 70s called Creepy Magazine. And Uncle Creepy was their sort of like their crypt keeper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And probably if I would have known how that particular name would have aged, I might have been a little bit more selective, but it's probably nothing but a good thing, so I'm grateful for it. And yeah, he gave me my first job working at Fangoria. Job meaning I wasn't getting paid, but I was still associated with something that I had all my life and had my whole life adored, I should say. And it wasn't long, man. I mean, people started knowing who I was. My wife was on that message board, and here we are, you know. And she still isn't buying shit from me anyway. So I'm getting myself into all sorts of trouble. But, you know, they gave me a ball, man. Someone gives me a ball, I'm going to run with it. And they led me to another company, which I don't like mentioning. I'm not sure if I even named them in the book because I don't like saying their name because they appear like fucking Candyman if you say it too many times. That was I'm referring to Jerk Off and Dick.
Oh, okay.
But that was the impetus of Dread Central. And Dread Central, you know, formed out of that particular company. It was like a news area of that particular company. And, you know, we just went off and we did our own thing, man. And we had what we called our Independence Day on July 6th of 2006. And it's still happening now, you know. The website's still live. I don't know what's going on there. It's kind of painful me to revisit, to be honest. But I hope they're doing well, you know. I mean, I don't know what Dread Central is like anymore, whether it was better with me or better without me, but it's not my job to judge. It's the fans' job to judge. That's who that particular thing falls upon. So if it's doing well and people are loving what they did, what they're doing, God bless.
I know that during your time at Dread Central that you were pretty pivotal in bringing the Terrifier movie to their attention.
Yeah, man. You see, and that was that was a ride in and of itself. Dread Central under me was around for at that time, I want to say about 16 years, and it's hard making money online. You know, anyone who's ever tried it can attest to it. But the way we would make money as a company, first of all, the first 7 years of Dread Central made not a dime.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everyone always thought, oh, these people are getting movie budgets and to do this, this, and that. No, I was working at GameStop retailing video games, fucking for a few hours a day. My typical day when I was doing that, I would wake up at like 4 in the morning, update the website for the morning people on the East Coast, and I would go to work at 9, and I would come home at like 3, and then I would update the site again for anything that I missed, and then I would update the site well into the evening, and I would go to sleep about 2 in the morning and wake up and do it all over again. That for 7 years. And we made a little bit of money back then, but it wasn't anything like life-changing, certainly. But from my perspective, we always wanted to pay the writers first, you know? So anything we made would go right, whether it be just, you know, hey, here's something from Amazon for you, pick this, or whatever it was. And that's the way the business was run until, I want to say around year 7, when we started actually making money, and I was able to quit retail and give the finger to all of that fucking world. It was like one of the most miserable experiences I swear to God. Yeah, I mean, all of a sudden we started making money, and life was great, man. You know, I mean, I was able to quit the retail gig. I was able to just do Dread Central full time, which was like a dream to me. And the way we'd make money was, let's say, for instance, at that time, you're Warner Brothers, and you have I Am Legend coming out, right? So you do ad buys with a website, and if the movie does well at the weekend, it opens, you know, they attribute that to where they spent their marketing budget, so they come back and make another ad buy or another ad buy. So we were making, you know, really good money for, I don't know, several years at least. But then this little thing called social media happened, you know, and studios went from buying ads with sites like ours to spending that money on Instagram pages and Facebook, you know, users. And, you know, and then they would like, hey, can you cover our Instagram page? Like, oh, yeah, sure. The one thing that's putting me out of business. I'll be sure to jump right on. So
we weren't on that, yeah.
Yeah. So we had a choice to make. One of the things I'm most proud of, for the majority, I'd say 90% of my tenure at Dread Central, is we were always self-owned and operated. You know, there was never a back company, there was never a parent company, there was nothing like that. And that helped us to develop our unique voice, because at that point, what I wanted to do was I wanted to level the playing field. I wanted to give the indie filmmaker as much of a voice as the studio filmmaker. And Dread Central did that, and that's where we made our bones, and we became successful by doing that. And that's why you've seen things like Hatchet and Paranormal Activity and all that shit we were talking about before anybody fucking came around and noticed in Hollywood. And, you know, bottom fell out again. We went from making sometimes 30 grand a month to $700. Like, it happened that fast. And we tried launching a Patreon, you know? I mean, at that time, Dread Central was doing like 1.5 million hits a month, which is huge traffic for us, right? And the Patreon was going to give users the site as they always wanted it, without any ads. All they had to do was chip in $1 per month, you know? And you get the site ad-free. You wouldn't have to worry about anything, but it's hard to convince people to pay for something when they can get it free somewhere else and have the inconvenience of an ad. So that didn't work. So we ended up either closing doors or selling to a parent company. And at that time, Epic Pictures Group, they were interested. and acquired Dread Central because they wanted to spin it off into a label for their home video horror releases. And, you know, that sounded like a great idea to me. It enabled me to keep doing what I was doing. And at that particular time, you know, they were like, oh, we don't want to change anything. We're buying your voice. We want you to keep doing what you're doing. And it became very apparent that they wanted a yes man. And I am not a motherfucking yes man. I am a fuck you man, you know? So when something is wrong, yeah, you're going to hear about it if I don't agree with it. And it was the one guy who I had the biggest issues with was the guy who was spearheading the Dread Central initiative. The other guy was totally cool. It was just a problem, and it was awful. Like I was like gaslit. Like everything I thought, everything I came up with was always shit. It wasn't good enough. It was telling me things like, you're irrelevant. No one cares what you have to say here. And that's fucking awful because I created this thing so I would have some place to fit in. I've had to literally create places for myself to fit in. And that's crazy, but I did it twice, you know? And it came time to come out with Dread Central's first video release, and they sandwiched me with a boatload of screeners, and every fucking one of them was terrible. And, you know, if this is going to have my name on it and it's going to be our initial release, it's got to be fucking banging. You know, it's got to make a statement. So I picked 2 films before I was relegated to trying to sell ads. The 2 films I picked were Kane Hodder's documentary, To Hell and Back, which I'm insanely proud of, getting that out there. That's a hell of a tale. And surprisingly, while I was inundated with all that horse shit, you know, I got an email from Damien Leone. He's like, hey, Steve, I saw your quote on the back of the box for Rob Zombie's 31, and I figured you might be somebody who would dig this kind of movie that I made. I don't know what to do with it. I'm having all sorts of problems trying to get it out there. Can you take a look at it for me and maybe give me a quote? So at this time, I was like, anything other than the shit I was currently weeding through, thank you. And I watched Terrifier. And I shut it off and I watched it again. I watched it again. And I called Damien. I'm like, well, what are you doing with this? And he was like, I'm not doing anything with it. We're a hair away from self-distributing it. I'm like, no, don't you dare. I want this. This is the movie that needs to be the first release from Dread Central. And he was like, you think, you know, Epic would be interested? I'm like, I'll make sure they know about it, and I'll make sure they're interested. And what I didn't realize at that time was I was going to be in for one hell of an uphill battle with it. I went to, I think in the book I call him Shake and Bake.
Yeah.
Whose head is probably going to explode when he reads the book. But anyway, I went to him and I was like, I found it. This is the movie. This is what we need. This is exactly the kind of movie I want out there under our label. And they ended up acquiring it. And several months later, it was like, this is the worst mistake we've ever made. This movie is unreleasable. Everything needs to be changed. The title needs to be changed. They wanted to call it at one point #Terrifier to be #1 in the fucking Redbox fucking thing. And everything was a fucking battle with them. Everything. It was the only time Damien and I had ever argued was over them and the way that they were. And it was just, it was exhausting. And it got to the point where during one of our endless weekly masturbatory meetings where everybody would throw ideas out there and everyone else would pat each other on the back, oh, that's great, we're never going to do that. So it was like this giant fucking waste of time every week that they insisted on happening. And at one of those meetings, I said, listen, if this movie doesn't hit, I'll walk away. You could have my part of the company. I don't want anything. I don't need anything. I'll walk away. And I think at that time, the person who was trying to get rid of me because I wasn't the yes guy, you know, I think he thought to himself that this movie, he believed this movie is a piece of shit and no one's ever going to want to see it. And it was the easiest and quickest and most economical way to get rid of the problem child, which was me.
Hmm.
And they took me up on that offer, and they released the movie, and it blew up. You know, it just was everywhere. But the best thing, they kind of dumped it into theaters under this guy's fucking watch. And but the one good thing they did do was they put it on Netflix with this really killer artwork, and people started discovering it. And before you knew it, people were building murals and painting stuff and doing this and doing that and making their own merchandise. Like, I remember walking to a show and I saw people with Terrifier shirts, and I'm like, I called Danny. I'm like, dude, do we have... That's how you know I'm old, when I refer to calling as this. So I get on the phone with Danny and I say, dude, do we have merch? And he laughed. He goes, merch. Ah! Right. But then I was like, I think we're onto something, dude, because people are making their own stuff. And here's the thing when it comes to indie filmmaking and people claiming they have the next Midnight movie or the next cult favorite or the next Jason Voorhees or horror icon or what have you. Your only job as a filmmaker is to make the best movie you can. You don't get to choose what you're making, okay, in that respect. The only people that can make those choices and deem it a horror icon and say, this is the next movie or this is the next big thing, is the fans.
Mm-hmm.
And Terrifier exploded. It ended up being one of just not Dread Central's best sellers. I think it was totally 100% one of Dread Central's best sellers, but also one of Epic's best sellers, right up, if not number one. I mean, I don't really know the numbers because right after that I quit. And I said, you know what? I'm out. And that was my swan song because I didn't have to deal with him anymore. And, you know, my whole thing, the reason why I was in this for so long was to help the indie filmmaker, man. And I helped give the world Terrifier. I was very instrumental in making that happen. There's nobody that could ever take that away from me.
Right.
If I didn't do exactly what I did, this movie would have went nowhere. And hopefully, the best I could have hoped for was somebody would discover it, you know? And I opened up that avenue. I put that shit out there, and I risked my entire career to do it. And it went out there, and it blew up. And I said to myself, you know what? If the fans are calling this the next horror icon, that's my mic drop. That's my swan song. I'm out. You know, and that's what I did. A couple of other issues came up, and I promptly said, fuck you, you're an asshole, and I went on my way. So that was that, man. That's how Terrifier got out there, you know, and it wouldn't have been able to blow up as big as it did if Damien himself didn't make a killer movie, which he truly did. Damien is a very, very smart and good filmmaker, and David is beyond reproach when it comes to his characterization of Art the Clown. And I knew the movie was going to hit. I don't know what it was, but I just felt it in my gut. But the fact of the matter is, you could make the best movie in the world if nobody sees it because they don't know about it. You didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So Dread Central had sunset it for me, and I didn't know what the fuck I was going to do. You know, being Uncle Creepy, it's the only thing I'm good at. You know, it's the only time I feel that I'm alive, you know? So Damien and I were talking. He's like, hey, man, we're going to do a sequel. And I'm like, brother, I have to be part of it. Not because it's something I have, but because my story has become so entwined with its story that we're a part of each other's legacy, you know? And so I asked Damien, let me come on board. I will work for free. Let me do whatever you need me to do. I don't care what it is. And so basically, if there were certain actors he was interested in, I would get them because I know everyone. If he had a question about where something would work in a movie, I would advise, you know. And ultimately, once the film was done, you know, we have a 2.5 hour Killer Clown movie. What the fuck are we gonna do with that? But everyone knew the movie was good, you know, and that's what mattered. What mattered was satisfying the fans who had carried the original in such high regard. That's what was important, and that's what that movie is. That's what that movie was made for. And at the end of the day, it started going around, and Brad Miska called me from Bloody Disgusting, and he said, "Steve, what do we have to do to get Terrifier 2 for Cineverse and Screambox?" And I told him, and then I was instrumental in doing all that and getting them the budget that they wanted. So I did my job as producer, because that's really what a producer does. It secures the deal, and I did that and then some. And then the movie came out, and Cinedyne and fucking Bloody Disgusting and Screambox, I mean, those cats are heroes. They took a chance nobody ever would have taken in that movie. Nobody. And I hold them in the highest regard, because they're one of the people who I've come across in my life who really did the right thing. And Terrifier 2 came out. I put on what was arguably a social media clinic for 2 years, you know, constantly talking about it, constantly retweeting it, constantly engaging with the fans. And the movie fucking blew up, man. You know, and then people started puking, and I was like, what the fuck is that? Right? And people were like, oh, that's a marketing stunt. Marketing stunt? We weren't even fucking smart enough to think of that, right?
No, I was at a theater where somebody actually did pass out. They didn't vomit, but they did pass out.
It's fucking amazing.
And I have a picture of me on the Twitter or X or whatever the fuck they call it. And it's me standing outside the theater, and there's the fire truck and ambulance and a few cruisers in the background. I was like, yeah, that Terrifier 2 is pretty good.
It just fucking blew up. And you know who did that? The fans. They showed up. And I made sure that it wasn't. The fans needed to know that they just weren't on the ride with us. They need to know that they were in the car with us, you know? And everything was happening in real time. We never knew when it was going to get held over. We didn't know any of that shit till a day before it was supposed to be decided. And it was a very lightning in a bottle moment. It was very validating for me, above all, you know, because, again, I put my whole shit on the line for this thing. Mm-hmm. And, yeah, it exploded, man, and I'm so grateful and blessed to have been part of that ride, because that's an experience not everyone gets to have. You know, and I learned a lot, and I think Damien is destined for great things. I think that David is destined for great things. You know, Phil and his wife, this movie don't exist without Phil Falcone. I get that, because he was instrumental in making 1 and 2, and I will never take that away from him, you know? Everybody busted their ass on those movies. I mean, 9 people made Terrifier 2. I was never on set a day, you know, but I was doing what I was doing remotely. And then I moved back to the East Coast, and I did even more. And, you know, it was what it was. And I'm glad to have been a part of that ride, and I'm really looking forward to see where it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, David Howard Thornton, I met him at the Mad Monster Party here in Carolina. Mm-hmm. And actually, he was my very first guest on this YouTube channel. He was like, so then it was before, it was after Terrifier, but I think they didn't start Terrifier 2 yet. So this is like, yeah, sort of a few years ago. But yeah, he was a fun guy. I threw a bunch of characters at him to make him do these impressions and stuff.
He's an amazing guy.
So now you have the accolade, the attitude, which other ones that you have, is that you when you met George A. Romero, which I was like, and I think I said this when I commented on your Facebook post about the book. It's like you have the horror industry experience and things that you've done that makes any horror fan covet and jealous. And one of those is you got to be a zombie in I believe it was Survival of the Dead.
Greatest
and
life.
and you did and you made it to screen time. You didn't end up on the editing room floor because you're like front and center in front of the and that
you got to eat.
Yeah.
That's the biggest honor on a Romero movie is if you get to eat.
Yeah.
You know, I hope that through the book, I know I had a very charmed experience. I mean, having George A. Romero and Sid Haig as mentors,
Sid Haig.
it's like Bigfoot deeming you cool enough to know he really exists, right? And I hope with the book, I was able to give the reader and fans a little bit of insight as to what those people were really like and what it was like to be around them and how they were and how they carried themselves. Because when I met them, I was already late 30s, early 40s maybe. And I never had anyone show me how to do anything. I never had anyone there I could count on to advise me or tell me what the right thing is. The only thing I had was passion and a good sense of humor. And for some reason, George and me and Sid and I, we just clicked with each other. And they not only became my friends, but they became my mentors, you know? And they taught me so much about how to carry yourself, how to treat people, and how to expect to be treated, and when to say fuck you if you're not treated right. And I take all of that and I use it every day. You know, I apply that every day. So it isn't even just industry work that they taught me, it's personal work. It's like I finally had a chance to learn from somebody that I trusted, that I knew wasn't going to hurt me. And it was very much huge in my life. And I hope I had so many wonderful experiences with both of them. And I hope that through the book, you get to know them each a little bit better, you know? Maybe something you didn't know about them, or maybe you wonder how they would react in a certain situation, you know? It was very charmed. And everything they taught me, all I do, dude, is I try to help people in the film industry and try to impart that knowledge upon them if they want to hear it, you know? The thing about getting older is you get all this wisdom and you can't even give it away, you know? Nobody wants it. So when I have a chance, I really try to give it to people when they ask. Like Damien, like, you know, what would George think about this, or what would Sid think about that, or what they would do, what would they tell you to do in this situation? And that's important to me because they both gave me a gift and I have to share it as a means to honor them. So I hope with the book I did that, and I hope that people can really look at those two absolute fucking legends in a light they never seen them in before.
Now, when you were spending time with people like George and Sid and Doug Bradley and whoever else used to reading the book and knowing what your upbringing was, and all these people telling you that you weren't going to amount to anything, you were useless, blah blah blah. Did you ever kind of like look around and have this? I guess I don't even think I get it. It's like imposter syndrome. It's like
imposter syndrome, 100% real. You know, I never feel like I'm good enough. I never feel like I've done enough. I never feel it when I look at something I've done. Typical artist, all I see is its imperfections. You know, being a creative can be torturous in that it's very simple and very easy for us to ignore something beautiful that we've done and just see the tiniest of things that are wrong with it that nobody else will, that nobody else is going to pay attention to. So I've done a lot of shit, and I still don't feel like I've done enough. And I still feel like the best is going to come because I'm not done yet, When I quit Dread Central, I thought I was done, but I'm not done. And that was the most inspiring thing about the whole trip. And I know I have so much more to give. And I know that I could do it. Just I hope that God doesn't strike me dead before it fucking happens. So if I wake up tomorrow morning and I die and you hear about it, you motherfucker, I'm just going to blame you, Tom. Okay? Your fucking fault. Dude.
Okay. Okay. Well, is there a story like maybe like a B-side story that you could tell us briefly that's not in the book about some of the parties with Sid and because
he was amazing in every way. How many people do you know would like? I just walked up to him and we started dancing at his wedding, and we danced the whole song together. And what Sid would do, man, oh God, there's so many stories. I don't even know where to start. He was just a beautiful human being, and I miss him so much.
Yeah.
Sid actually, it's funny. Danny met Sid a long time ago, and he and Bill had come over to her house for dinner. And this was like 20-something years ago. And he was over here in Jersey at a convention. Danny's very personable, and so she's like, come on over for dinner. And so he came over and, he's playing fucking air hockey against her infant daughter and letting her win. And it's just, he was so cuddly and yet so fucking disturbingly good at getting you fucked up. I mean, it was an amazing guy, man. I wish there was still time for him to have had more to do. But, you know what? He went out like a champ. He went out by his way. He fought it until he couldn't fight it no more.
Mm-hmm.
He did that because he wanted to leave something behind, not only for his wife, but for the fans, because Sid, like George, would spend every fucking minute he could at his table, regardless of how big the line was, to make sure everybody there got a signature from him, because he wanted that level of communication and to show his appreciation for these people who have given him the kind of life he only ever dreamed about. And now I'm in that same position. So when I go to the show and I'm signing there, I will stay there till every motherfucker in the world gets what they want. And here's something that's not in the book. I started a new tradition, Tom. So I decided that, someone told me, Steve, because I'm new at signing at conventions, like, you should just take one of your pictures and draw on it and make sure, your pen is working. So, of course, what I do is I draw a dick on my face immediately, because that's what you do. And then it was a Sunday, and everyone who came to the table, whether there was a customer or a fan or a celebrity, I had them draw a dick on my face on this 8x10. And so by the time the end of the show happened, there was this one 8x10 of me with dicks aplenty all over. Oh. And then I gave it away to somebody at the end of the night, So it's just, that's my new, it's Dick Pic Sunday, Tom. Not in the book, but it should be. But it happened, it was a thing that was coined after the book was already written.
Okay, all right.
No, after that that story.
Yeah. Well, how come the cunt roasters never cut an album?
Dude, we were huge in Bulgaria. That was another true story. Oh my God, Jesus Christ. Fuck. Here's the thing. I've been in the industry for, July is going to be 32 years. And throughout this time, I've met lots of people who've come up to me and asked me, or even just told me, I'm writing my autobiography. Can I send you a copy? My first thinking, and even Scott Johnson, who did the book, he said it to me. He said the same thing. He's like, what makes you think that your life is so interesting that people would want to read about it? And that's not a slight. It's just genuine curiosity. It's like, what is it about you that you feel the need to do this? And imposter syndrome, we just spoke about it when I was writing. I was like, is this interesting? I don't know. But the one thing I know it was truthful. And there are shocks, there are laughs, there are killer pimps, there are flying bowls of spaghetti. There's so much there. And it's all delivered with honesty and authenticity. So I hope when people do get the book, they can sit down and just either laugh or cry or both, or put it in their toilet and use it as fucking paper. I don't give a shit, Just if they can read it, and anyone who buys it for any reason, what a gift that is to me, And my birthday's coming up in a few weeks. You want to buy me a gift, guys?
Yeah.
Go for my fucking book. That's a gift I would love, but we'll see where it goes. I have no disillusions. I think autobiographies are a niche market at best, so I don't think it's going to become a bestseller or anything like that. I just think that my original purpose, my original vision, which Danielle had brought to me, that if it could just help one person, then I consider the book successful.
Yeah, well, I could tell you, when I wrote it, it just hit me in the feels quite a bit. I felt sadness, I felt empathy, I felt anger, I felt inspired, happy. I felt God, you crazy guys,
It truly is an American memoir for the completely dysfunctional. It really is,
Well, I just have one final question.
Sure.
Have you done any more paranormal investigations, you and your wife?
Not yet, but that stuff pops up sporadically, and it's always been an interest of mine because I've always wanted to know what there is, if there is something else, which ultimately means at 40 years old, I decided to start roaming around in the dark looking for ghosts because I'm an adult. And, it's just a fascinating subject. I'd love to do it more. I think I will do it more. If people have a bookstore that they think is haunted, I'll do an investigation and a reading and a signing, I'll do the whole thing. I'm open to anything, One person on Twitter asked me if I would consider coming to a campfire and just telling stories from the book or from without the book. And of course, I'm down for whatever. If it makes somebody happy and they're genuinely into it, even if it's just one person, I will be the first one to show up and the last one to leave.
Well, Uncle Creepy, I just want to say one thing to you, and I mean it to honestly and very sincere. Beedee Beedee.
Beedee Beedee, motherfucker.
And if you want to find out what that means, you got to order the book, because we ain't going to tell you.
That's right. Did you hear my wife laugh when you said that?
Yeah. So, A Comedy of Tragedies. It comes out December 10th, 2024.
If they pre-order it, they get it 2 weeks early, and they get it signed. And the ebook. So there's lots of reasons to order it from the publisher site. And I can't think of anything else I'd rather read at Thanksgiving.
So, well, if people want to find out more about you, Uncle Creepy, where could they go?
I'm fucking everywhere, dude. On Twitter, I'm at Uncle Creepy. On Facebook, I'm Steve Uncle Creepy Barton. I had to make a fan page for myself because I hit the limit at friends. And man, do I still feel dirty about doing that because that really was awkward. On Instagram, I'm Uncle Creepy SB. On TikTok, I don't know what the fuck I am on TikTok. I just post weird shit, so I couldn't tell you. I'm on TikTok. Look and you'll find me, but I don't know what I mean.
Yeah, I think you just followed me.
Yeah, did I? I don't know what my name is. I'm Steve Uncle Creepy Barton on TikTok.
Okay.
See that, man? You know more. You know even more shit about me than I do.
Well, I do my research.
Well, I sincerely hope that in this instance, the research wasn't a big pain in the ass and you had some fun and you enjoyed yourself.
I did. And yes, the first 11 chapters is not all bad. There's some...
Thanks!
There's some... it's not all, like, depressing.
Sir.
So... Alright, well...
See, this is what the book is.
Alright, well, Uncle Creepy, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was an incredible experience for me because you're the first person I've talked to outside of everyone who I personally sent it to that has read the book. And so when I saw your reaction to it, I was very touched. I immediately became excited for this interview because you're my first. You popped my cherry, Tom.
Oh, wow. You ready for a cigarette?
No, I'm ready for a joint, maybe a cup of scotch. I don't know. Tobacco don't do it for me.
All right. Well, thanks again, and until next time.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.